Hi guys, Pete the Wargamer here and welcome back to another painting tutorial. In this video I'll be showing you how you can go about painting marble effects on your miniatures. And for this I'll be using the stone head found within the Shattered Dominion Objectives box set. So before we can do anything, we first of all need to prime our miniature. Now for this, I've opted to use Corax White. Now the reason I've chosen white is because we'll be painting a light coloured marble. It just makes a lot of sense to use a white and then shade down. And also the reason I've used a spray paint for this task is because it's a lot quicker than applying it using a brush. So the first task in painting is start adding some shading to those recesses, and for this I'll be using Seraphim Sepia. Now out of the pot, Seraphim Sepia is much too strong, so we need to thin it down a little bit. So for this I'll be mixing in some Lahmian Medium. Now the reason I'm using Lahmian Medium for this is because I only want to reduce the level of pigmentation in the wash. I don't want to thin it down, make it runny or anything like that. I just want to basically make it a much more subtle application of a wash. So I have my Seraphim Sepia here on my wet palette. I'm just going to mix in some Lahmian Medium. You want to use roughly the same amount of Lahmian Medium that you use with Seraphim Sepia. Don't worry too much about getting an exact match, but you can mix in just a little bit extra Lahmian Medium if you're not sure. With our Seraphim Sepia mix, we now want to start applying it to the recessed areas of the miniature. Now for this particular item that I'm painting here, you can see there's a good mix of quite sharp recesses around the cracks, but also some more shallow and more subtle recesses around the facial features. Now this is why it's important to thin down your mixture. If we'd applied it straight out of the pot, it would be very strong, it would be very intense, and it just wouldn't look quite right. But the beauty of thinning down your paint is that you can always add more later on. If you're not happy with how much you're applying around the cracks, for example, allow it to dry thoroughly and then apply some more over the top. Now you can see the importance of starting off with a lighter base coat at this stage. It basically means we can control exactly where these recessed areas, and we can also very easily control the strength of them as well. If we'd started off with a darker paint and tried to lighten it up, it would take a lot longer and also be a lot more effort. So continue applying your wash until all of those recesses have been shaded. In this next step, we're going to be using some Drakenhof Nightshade to add some differentiation in the colour. Now, we want to mix in some Lahmian Medium, much like we did with the Seraphim Sepia, because out of the pot, Drakenhof Nightshade will be far too strong to apply over a white base coat like this. So once you have your mix, you then want to start applying it to some of the deeper recesses, such as the cracks that I have here. Now the use of Drakenhof Nightshade here will have two effects. First of all, it will darken down some areas of the cracks, making them look a lot deeper than they actually are. And secondly, it will help to result in a more realistic looking marble appearance. If you look at marble, it very rarely has only one colour. It has a few different colours in there based on the different mineral content that's found in those veins. So we can easily recreate this by using the Drakenhof Nightshade to create some greenish bluish tinges to some of these areas. For now, the washes have been completed and we want to start work on painting those veins that the marble surface will have. And for this, we'll be using Eshin Grey, but before we can apply this, we first of all need to water it down to make it a lot easier to work with, and also to make it a slightly translucent when you apply it to the white. So I've put some Eshin Grey on my wet palette here, and I'm mixing in some water in roughly equal quantities, so 1 part Eshin Grey to 1 part water. So using your watered down Eshin Grey, you now want to use a very thin brush, the thinnest you have, and start lightly dragging that brush across the surface of the miniature. Don't worry about getting perfectly solid lines, as this will actually help to improve the level of realism that we have in the marble. If you're painting a miniature like this which has cracks in it, then you can also follow the cracks out using your lines of Eshin Grey. Now I find it's very useful at this stage to have a reference photo, some marble of a similar colour. It's very handy to see how the lines interact with each other, how they intersect and how they cross over, and also how they become thicker in some areas. You basically want to recreate this across the surface of your miniature, and the level that you do is completely up to you. Some people might want more veins than others, and it really is down to personal preference. The final steps in painting your marble will again involve using some of the thinned down Lahmian Medium and Drakenhof Nightshade that we used earlier. As I've already mentioned, marble very rarely has a single colour, so we're going to be using this around the intersections of the veins on the top to create some areas of Seraphim Sepia and also Drakenhof Nightshade. I find that it's better to focus on just one side of a line as opposed to just painting all over the lines. You will get a better and more realistic looking appearance by doing it this way. Much like before, start off using Seraphim Sepia and then move on to Drakenhof Nightshade. You can even apply some of the Drakenhof Nightshade over the top of the Seraphim Sepia as well. And here we have the completed miniature. Now I've added a coat of gloss varnish over the top just to give us that shiny marble appearance. You don't have to do this, you can have a matte varnish or a satin varnish if you want. This is entirely down to personal preference. Now whilst I focus on painting an objective marker for this tutorial, you could apply the techniques to anything you wanted, be it scenery or miniatures themselves. You can get some really nice armor effects on maybe some Stormcast Eternals or even some Space Marine weaponry. Now if you enjoyed this video, please do let me know in the comments below, and also give me some suggestions for other similar videos like this where I focus on one particular thing, and I'll maybe do some more in the future. Now you can find a full list of all the paints that I've used in the description below, along with all the equipment and tools, including the wet palette that I've used as well. And finally, if you're interested in supporting this channel in making these kind of videos, you can do so by checking out my Patreon page. From there you can donate to me from as little as $1 a month, which just really helps me in producing this content. And so the only thing left to say is thanks for watching and goodbye.